Welcome to Designing Growth, the podcast that helps owners and founders create the business of their dreams by thinking critically about the most important and often most challenging aspect of growing an agency, client relationships. From first proposal to final delivery, the founding team of Motion.io will share their own experiences alongside that of guests to help you market your services better, complete projects faster, and exceed client expectations at every step of the way. So, let's get it moving. Happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome back to Designing Growth. Really excited for this episode because today we have our first guest and what will become a very routine guest on this podcast, my co-founder, my friend, my former boss, Perry Rosenbloom, joining us on the show.
What's up, everybody? I am so happy to be here. So excited to be recording this with you, Sam. It's been a few years since we recorded something together from back at the old business days, and excited to be here and be working on Motion.io together.
Yeah, I'm really excited, to be working together again on a business. How many years has it been now since we had actually last formally worked together? About 2, I think?
Yeah, around 2 years. So it's been a while. It's exciting to be back in the saddle together and making some good magic happen and building something unique and powerful for the industry.
Yeah, and I do want to get into talking about what brought us here to Motion.io and the things that we're doing at Motion.io and the product we're building. But first, I want to lead into that by asking you if you could share something personally that happened cool with you this week that relates to Motion.io.
So something cool that happened to me this week that relates to Motion.io and also relates to last business is that I am full-time now and full-time on Motion.io. I'm recording this right now, though, from an iPad Pro because I managed to spill coffee all over my laptop as I was setting up. And I found it really ironic because in our prior business over at Brighter Vision, there were 2 times that we hired a new employee and they spilled either coffee or soda all over their new computer in their first week. And I mean, we could go on about the funny story with that, but they were terrified after that happened. But I am super proud that I am the first person in Motion.io to destroy a computer in their first week of work. Literally in my first 10 minutes of work, I managed to destroy a computer. As we start hiring folks, I think should go into the culture guide and the culture book that we create.
It just shows you that anybody can make, these kind of silly mistakes. And I think that is ultimately becomes an important part of culture, is admitting that, hey, everybody makes mistakes. At some point, they're unavoidable. It's about what we can do as a team working together to mitigate some of those mistakes, whether it be spilling coffee on a laptop or whether it be something more specific to the company, the product, the things that we're sending out. So I like that anecdote.
And that's a great point you made there, Sam, about how anyone can make mistakes. And when we were building Brighter Vision, our agency, there's so much interaction when there's a client-facing project between a designer or a project manager and the client. And at the end of the day, we're only humans, and everybody who's working on a project is only a human. And there are going to be mistakes that get made. And something we found, and something that's pushing us in Motion.io in this direction, is we want to create a product that when there's humans interacting on a product and with clients and client-facing projects, that we can help the company minimize the amount of human mistakes that happen in a client-facing project. So that way the client will ultimately be happier with the end result because the process will be smoother. The experience of working with that company, that agency, to get the end result is going to be so much more enjoyable because there's a product out there like Motion.io that's going to help minimize some of the human mistakes that can be made in the process.
It's a really great point for me, Perry, that brings up a larger idea of what this product, what Motion.io is all about. Because at the heart of every agency are those human interactions that are so important. And the role of software in a agency, I don't think, and I would love to hear your take on this, the role of software should not replace those human interactions and those things that really make someone's experience working with an agency so much more enjoyable. It should be instead software trying to help streamline things in a way where you're allowing more space and more bandwidth to spend more time with your clients and get to know them in a better way when you are not strapped down, chasing down clients for the things you need, the approvals, the feedback, and things like that. And that's a big part of how I'm looking at what we're doing at Motion.io and how we communicate the mission. But what are your thoughts? Anything to add, expand, change there?
Sam, I think you hit the nail on the head like perfectly there. You know, when you're doing client work, the interactions and the relationship that you build with the client is so integral and so key to a project's success, as is the collaboration side of things. What we're focusing on with Motion is to make it so that collaboration can happen more easily. So that way, software is not hindering collaboration, but enabling collaboration. And that software is not replacing relationships and interactions, but improving the client relationship and your relationship with the client and the interactions you have. You know, it's going to help the agency owner make their business more streamlined. It's going to help improve overall employee happiness because let's face it, no employee wants to be picking up the phone and dialing 10, 15 clients and pestering them for deliverables or feedback that they need. They want to be able to focus on design and focus on improving the experience. And that's going to help the client experience and make the client happier and long-term lead to more business because a happier client refers more business, right? And so if you're able to improve that client experience, improve that client process to the point that the client is happier, it improves your overall reviews that you get and the quality of your reviews online, and you're going to get so much more business and then get lots more referrals as well.
And I completely agree with all of the things that you added. Improving the way that you're working with clients has so many implications within every aspect of your business, from those referrals, from the reviews, from your ability to ultimately scale and grow your business. You had mentioned Brighter Vision, and something that I've talked about in our last couple of episodes. I know you've listened to those, Perry. But what I would like to do for just a second, because we are early on in this podcast, early on in our journey of Motion.io and developing the product itself, I would love to hear from your perspective how your previous experiences, Brighter Vision being one of them, drove you to want to create Motion.io.
And Sam, thanks for starting this podcast. And thank you to our listeners for engaging with us on this podcast. Early days of podcasts are so tricky and challenging, right? Like we had a podcast over at Brighter Vision about 200 episodes in. If you listen to those first episodes, oh man, they were rough. And I think you've done a great job at creating a foundation here for our podcast. And I hope our audience is enjoying this so far. Brighter Vision was a different kind of agency. We were building 200 to 300 websites a month, which was kind of out of this world. And we'd always see problems though. By doing things at that scale, we'd see certain areas where projects got stuck. A lot of it was focused around the client never really quite knowing where they are in the process and what they need to do to push the project forward. A few thousand websites in, we started realizing that. And we ended up building our own software internally to help solve some of those problems, but never quite fully solve them. And the way we were solving it was different. But we took that experience and we started talking with customers, potential customers here at Motion.io, talking with agency owners and creatives about the problems they face. And we found a lot of great information that, yes, there's problems with clients not knowing where in the process they are, clients not knowing what they need to deliver to push the process forward. And so we validated those ideas and created some unique features in Motion.io that will help enable that to be resolved. But then we also found out that some of the problems that we used to face at Brighter Vision that we solved, specifically as it relates to feedback, is still a major problem that agencies are facing. It's compounded due to software. The software that exists right now and the software we use at Brighter Vision is actually making the problem worse for a lot of agencies and creatives, because what this software does, it allows you to put a little sticky note somewhere and say, I don't like this color. Can I change this color? But that tangential, unstructured feedback is really challenging for agencies to deal with and challenging to analyze. Because, designers and agency owners, speak a very different language than a client. Like if you're building a website, for example, for a roofer, they're not going to speak that same design language that you all speak at your agency. So as we started uncovering more and more about this problem, it became really exciting to us of, hey, not only can we work to solve the problem of keeping projects moving forward and communicating to a client what's needed to push it forward, but we can really solve this problem of feedback. And how does an agency get the right feedback from a client to push a project forward?
What you just mentioned, I think also partially relates to what we had talked about right at the start of the episode when we were talking about giving those person-to-person, personal relationships, interactions, a space to breathe. And for me, that's something that becomes a big problem with project management solutions. The tools that are there to check off those boxes to get specific things done. I think that in some ways, those pieces of software can take away from your relationship with clients and fulfilling the end result of a project in a really meaningful way.
You know, Sam, I love project management tools for working internally. Asana, Monday, we use Trello internally. Those are really great tools for an agency to use to keep their team on track. But they are not built for clients, right? Again, going back to the example of a roofer, or we can talk about a therapist with Brighter Vision. If a therapist goes into Asana, generally speaking, they're going to see this dashboard that is just so confusing and has so much going on in it. That's just going to create friction in the process. If you expect your clients to go into a standard project management dashboard like Asana or Monday and be able to use it successfully, you're asking a lot of your client right there. You're asking them to adapt to systems and processes that your team lives in every single day. And that's going to create a lot of friction. Basecamp, for example, the login, what on earth am I supposed to do here? I have no clue. Let me X this out and I'll shoot over 3 or 4 emails to my designer and tell them what I need done. And that just creates friction and creates frustration. And so, you know, with motion, we want to remove that friction process and frustration. We want to build a client-focused dashboard that shows your client what they need to do in a very streamlined, simple, but elegant way to keep that project moving forward.
In a way, I would look at project management tools as almost putting a client on a production line versus having a real breathing, living relationship with them. Project management tools, to me, if you're trying to use it with a client, seem way more Henry Ford and less, let's sit down and talk about this.
To extend that further, you know, there's a lot of agencies that we've spoken with that because these tools are so production line focused, they'll end up going back to, you know, something like Excel. And Excel generally can work better than some of these other project management tools for a client interaction. But still, Excel is cold. Excel it's not conducive to collaboration, and there's no way that you can get feedback in a streamlined way on Excel that's going to lead to actionable items for your team to go complete, to push that project forward. I think we need to take that Henry Ford line and use that in our marketing copy. I love that. And if our audience, if anyone's listening to this, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that Henry Ford line, because I think Sam knocked it out of the park on that one.
Oh, thanks, man. I did want to switch gears a little bit. You talked about how Brighter Vision, we were doing things at scale. And this gave us an opportunity to really analyze our relationships with clients and how we were working with them and look for tools and solutions to do that. Another thing that I think was useful working at that type of scale is we also got a really great sense, at least what I think is a really great sense now in hindsight, to see insights into when to hire and how to hire, because we were growing a team from just a couple of people. You know, I joined you as employee number 3 up to 30 employees, and there were a lot of lessons learned along the way. And I'd love to dive into that, because even if agencies out there are not working at that kind of scale of doing 200 to 300 projects a month, there is going to come a time when you need additional help and you need to hire. What I wanted to first start by asking you, as the founder of Brighter Vision, the one who was doing almost all of the hiring for, I would say, you know, 3/4 of our existence as a business, what would be your tips for an agency who hasn't made a hire yet, to identify where they most need help and where they would most benefit from help?
Gosh, what a great question, Sam. And hiring is challenging. It's one of the hardest things that you're going to do as a business owner. At the end of the day, right? Like if you're a solo business owner, you got into this because you wanted to design, you wanted to work with clients, you wanted to own your own time and build the business of your dreams. And then you're like, oh, I have to hire? What, when, how, who? The first few hires that I made in Brighter Vision, there were some rough hires. Hiring is, again, the hardest thing that you're going to do. So a lot of it depends on your goals, right? Like, what is your goal as an agency owner? Do you want to build a small little team of, 3 people and have a nice lifestyle business? Do you want to build a nice team of 10 people? Do you want to build this up to 100 people? What are your goals? And that can allow you to work backwards from there. And those goals can shift over time, right? Like, with Brighter Vision, the goal was initially to keep it at, a nice small team of 2 to 3 people. Eventually, we ballooned up to like 35 or so and built this cool software product. But when you're looking at things of what and where to hire, if you want to build a bigger business than what you can do yourself, you're likely going to need to bring somebody on to do some client work so that you can go out and do sales and do more sales. On the same hand, you could also look at what are my biggest weaknesses, and you can work to bring in help to backfill your weaknesses. At the end of the day, when you're looking to hire though, again, it goes back to your goals, because if you want to be the person who's doing the design work and doing the creative work, and that's what gives you purpose and meaning in your day-to-day, you're likely not going to want to bring somebody on to take that off of your plate unless you have enough work for that person plus you to do that. So what your first step would be to maybe hire a salesperson to help get more sales in the door, and then look to bring on another part-time designer, because you're not going to be able to keep up with all that sales work. But at the end of the day, look at what your goals are and work backwards from there.
And that piece of advice, working backwards from a goal, is actually one of the best things that I learned from you, and I think has a lot of implications even outside of hiring. If you are looking at marketing, hey, how many customers do we want to bring in this year? If you can work back from that goal, you have a really clear picture of what are the inputs, what is the effort, what is the budget that you need to be able to do things. And it's a really valuable thing to do with all aspects of your business. Your specific piece of advice for an agency owner in this sense, when they haven't hired yet, I think is spot on. Determine what type of business you want. Do you want to grow into a team of 20, 30 people, or do you want a lifestyle business where you have a couple of employees and you have an idea of the amount of work you can take on each month and don't want to grow past that? I think that that is perfectly acceptable for agencies to have an idea of, what is the maximum size they want to grow to. But at the same time, if that is not you and you want to grow to be as big as possible, set out goals for yourself, set out a timeline, set out where you want to end up on.
Generally speaking, there's 2 kinds of agency owners. There's the creative agency owner who wants to be able to do a lot of creative work. And then there's the sales and marketing agency owner that likes the types of client work that comes in from an agency, but is not going to be the one who's going to deliver the end product. And in these early days, if you're a solo agency owner, you're going to have to wear both those hats. Which hat are you okay taking off and giving to somebody else? That's going to help you understand where to go hire as well. And I don't know if you can hear on the other end, my kids are just running like crazy around this house. So apologies if that's distracting anybody here. I got a 9-year-old and a almost 7-year-old, and they are ready to get back to school after a long, fun summer.
Hey man, that's life. Sometimes things come up, and your life is not just the work you do. So totally understandable. One specific thing you pointed out was to understand your weaknesses and being able to backfill those weaknesses. I really liked your example about which hat do you want to wear. Do you want to be the person working with clients? Do you want to be the sales and marketing person? Within those two jobs, there's ultimately some other things that you need to do as a owner of an agency. And I think that there's pieces of that even if you're not interested in hiring somebody full time, you can outsource. And you can have either hourly work or contract work done on those things. What are your takes for outsourcing? How do you find outsourcing help? What do you determine what's better to outsource or what's better to hire internally for?
That's a great question, Sam. And let's work to break it down. I kind of view work in two different categories. And this is how I drive my decision making on whether to outsource or to hire internally. There's project-based work, which is I need to think like an owner. I need to collaborate and work with a team on something in order to produce an outcome. For example, that could be a project manager. That can be a sales representative. That could be a designer. And then there is task-based work, which there's some overlap. Like a designer can do task-based work as well. But if there is primarily like, I have a task, my job is to complete the task, and I do not need to generally collaborate or, be an owner to solve this task, then that's the other kind of work. And so for project kind of thinking work, that's when you want to hire internally. Yes, you can outsource that. Yes, you can use a 1099 contractor to do that. And in some cases that might be better. But long term, you're not going to be able to create a culture in your organization. And you're not going to really be able to necessarily, you might be able to, but it's going to be much harder to build a sustainable long-term business. Whereas task-based work, that is the perfect thing to outsource. So that can be design work, absolutely. But things such as, accounting or bookkeeping, that's a perfect example of task-based work. You can be doing your own books if you want. But as you're trying to grow a business, your time is super valuable here, right? You're going to be putting out fires. You're going to be interviewing. You're going to be hiring. You're going to be firing. You're going to be marketing. You're doing sales. You're managing all that stuff as a business owner. And so when you think of like, what can I outsource? Anything that's task-based work can be outsourced effectively. We had a bookkeeper at Brighter Vision. We were a mid-7-figure a year business, but there was no need to have an internal bookkeeper. And especially now, you can find fractional based work. So if you need help on your P&Ls, you can hire a fractional CFO to come in and help you for like 10, 15 hours to do your projections. So, that's kind of how I view things as when to outsource versus when to hire in an agency, is this task-based work that I can give someone a checklist, they can go through, check those things off, and they are not an owner of this. They're not going to ask questions. They're not going to necessarily go above and beyond to deliver a good client experience. Or is this project-based work where someone's going to be invested in the output, that is going to be an owner and put their owner cap on? And that's kind of how I would view whether to outsource or hire internally.
That distinction between task-based work and project-based work is something I see as incredibly valuable, because in my head, it helps break down the differences between each and how you should be hiring for each and how you should be employing that additional help. When you are looking to hire for project-based work, how important is it to you that the person that you are hiring has an ability to think like an owner, or at least evolve to take on more ownership of projects and things outside the initial job description over time?
In any organization, there's going to be A employees, B employees, and maybe even a few C employees. Personally, I'm always wanting to hire people who will be owners and be able to take on more. But everyone's got their own motivations. There are things in life that they are facing and obstacles to overcome. And so you're never really going to be able to pick that out perfectly, especially because hiring is so hard. But yeah, I really think it's important that when you're hiring, you want somebody who's going to be an owner. It's going to make your life so much easier, but you're not going to know that necessarily before you hire them. You can ask questions to help piecemeal that out and pull that information out of them, but you're really never going to know that in the end until they're in there and working for you.
What are some of the things that you learned over time in your approach to the hiring process? Are there specific types of people that you would look for? Are there specific questions that you ask during the interview process that might be helpful for agency owners to know as they look to hire for that project-based type of work?
There were a lot of questions we asked that kind of pulled that out. I don't have those questions on hand anymore. And maybe we could do a full episode on interview questions sometime soon here, Sam, because I don't have those questions on hand, and there's some really fantastic questions. But in terms of like things I would really look for, you want someone who's going to be a good cultural fit. And so it doesn't really answer the ownership question, but who's somebody that like is going to work in your culture and work to build this organization and is going to be a team player in it. From an ownership perspective specifically, gosh, I mean, we'd ask questions like, tell me about a time you were working on a project in a collaborative manner and the project failed or the outcome was less than desired, and tell us why that happened. And that's not the exact language again, but like what we would look for in that kind of answer was, could somebody take ownership in a project or a collaborative experience, whether it's internally or with a client not hitting the goals? Can they take ownership for it? And would they not put blame on other people? And that was a pretty important distinction there, because when people would start blaming others for a project not hitting the mark or a project shortcomings, that's when we would really get concerned of, again, I'd love to do another episode together, man, where we can really dive into, great interview questions for hiring in an agency. Because, man, we had some really solid ones, and, I'd love to pull up that information again to be able to share with our audience.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's one that totally makes sense to have on the books, just because some of these questions that we were asking to people were instrumental, especially in the later days of our hirings.
Do you remember any really good ones, man?
So one of my favorite all-time questions to ask anybody in sales or marketing, instead of saying, sell me this pen, just teach me something, anything. And I love that question because not only the response, but the way the person responded told me a lot about the way that they think. Because some people, when you would ask that question, they would get this deer in the headlights look, and they're like, what? Like, why are you asking this? Other people would be like, oh yeah, sure. Okay, let's get into it. Let me teach you how to shoot a free throw.
One thing I would love to ask people is, how did you prepare for this interview? And then to follow up with that, we'd say, tell me about Brighter Vision. I remember this one time we had an interview where we said, tell us about Brighter Vision. And it's very clear to our audience. What we did is we did websites for therapists. Full stop. That was it. And so we had somebody come on, and it was a video interview. And the interview was great. It was a great interview. I was thinking, man, we're going to hire this person. They're going to be fantastic in this role. And we're like, well, tell us about Brighter Vision. And their response was something like, they started hemming and hawing. And I started getting nervous. I'm like, oh man, what's going on here? And they're like, well, you do websites, right? Yep. And yeah, I don't really know anything else. Sorry, I didn't look at your website. What? Like, you couldn't even pull up our website? Like, you were doing a remote interview. At least pull up our website on your computer and just read the headline right up there. And again, I think we could have a fun, awesome episode on just talking about all the great interview questions you can ask to help you build your agency. But there's a little bit of a teaser of what's to come in a later episode here.
Absolutely. My final question on scaling up and getting additional help is, what are the ways that you think an agency might be able to assess whether they have a bandwidth problem, meaning they simply need to hire more, or they have a process problem, meaning that there are things within their process of working with clients that are broken and can be fixed by looking at things like software?
Well, let's establish first that everyone has a process problem, right? Like,
yep.
No matter if you're doing one website a month or you're doing 100 websites a month, everyone's got a process problem that can be fixed. From a bandwidth perspective, my feeling is that everyone should also have a bandwidth problem. Because if you don't have a bandwidth problem, you don't have enough business. And there's always going to be this push and pull between, oh, I need to hire somebody because we have a bandwidth problem, versus we can't hire somebody. Where are they going to find enough work? So, it's like this curve where, if for those watching on the video, they can see, if this is the amount of work that can be output in a single month, here's that curve. And then eventually you're going to go over that curve and you're going to have a bandwidth problem. You're going to hire, you're going to drop back below that curve. But then hopefully your marketing company is going to go back over that line there. As you're thinking about that, you're always going to hopefully have a bandwidth problem. You're always going to have a process problem. What our goal is with Motion is to make it so that your process problems are going away. You're still going to have some, we're not going to be able to solve everything for you, but hopefully we're going to be able to solve a lot of the problems that relate to process, at least as it pertains to project delivery and collaboration. That then hopefully will make it so you have less of a bandwidth problem and you can do more with fewer people.
Fantastic. We will absolutely expand into specific hiring questions and things like that in subsequent episodes.
Oh, I can't wait for that, man. That's going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that one as well. But I think that sort of push and pull between bandwidth and process is in many ways reflective of what we're doing here at Motion.io. As this is your first week working full-time in Motion.io, I wanted to move on to our final sort of section within this episode. First, I want to ask you the question of what are you most excited about in the next couple months of working on Motion.io?
Oh gosh, what am I not excited about, right? Like,
it's a loaded question.
Dude, seriously, I just love these early days so much where, in this case, it's three of us, you, me, our co-founder, Zach, sitting in a garage basically, or, our home offices and working nights and weekends to try and create something out of nothing. Going from 0 to 1 is such an exciting piece for me. But in terms of what am I really most excited about, just to take a step back and give some context, I sold Brighter Vision, my agency, about 2 years ago. In 6 days, it will actually be 2 years ago to the date. I worked for them for a year. Then I promised my wife that I was going to spend time with the family and, disconnect and give her a full summer and so that we can do fun things as a family. And so I took a full year off to kind of recharge. It wasn't a full year because I guess we started this talking about this 6-7 months ago, but I wasn't really working. And so now getting back in the saddle again and working full time is super exciting to me. So everything, but really what I'm most excited about is talking with customers, figuring out where are the nuances that we fit in and how do we make sure that we're building a product that is gonna really revolutionize their businesses and allow them to build the business that they really want to build and live the lives that they want to live. And I think Motion.io is going to be able to help make that happen for folks. And so I'm super excited about that. If there's anybody listening to this right now that we haven't spoken with yet, we'd love to hear from you. I want to chat with you. I want to understand what your problems are and the things you're facing. We spent, like Sam said, I think in episode 1, a lot of time talking with agency owners to understand what their problems are.
Go to our website, fill out a contact form. We'd love to hear from you. One final question I wanted to cap off this first episode by asking you, Perry, and this is a little bit more specific to you and I, just because working together, I feel like we were always talking about food, what we were cooking, what restaurants we might go to while we were away. My question for you to end this first episode is, what was the best thing you either cook, meaning that you cooked it at home, or you ate, whether it was at a restaurant? This week, what was it?
This week, well, oh my gosh, jeez. Well, all right. So, and for additional context for our listeners, Sam and I, like you said, Sam, I don't think even sold it fully. There was a period of time where I was spending more time with Sam on the road than I was with my wife. And we'd go out to some really awesome restaurants and eat a lot of great food. But my favorite thing that I've cooked this week, just the other day, I did a reverse sear of pork chops, bone-in pork chops, and I caramelized a bunch of onions, about 2 onions, and then I kind of reduced things down into a nice gravy sauce, and then I roasted the pork chops in this caramelized onion gravy sauce at like 350 until they hit 145. Made some mashed potatoes and some collard greens on the side. It was fantastic.
Oh, man.
Let me hear from you, Sam. What'd you do?
Well, first, the reverse sear on the pork chop, that sounds crazy to me. I've done a reverse sear with steaks plenty of times, but never with the pork chop. So that is one that's officially on my list now.
I love sous vide cooking as well, but if you don't have a sous vide, reverse searing is, I even think reverse searing might even be better than sous vide in a lot of cases.
Yeah. So the best thing that I cooked this week, one of my good friends just gave me the cookbook from Turkey and the Wolf, which is this really kind of funky, fun sandwich shop in New Orleans. And at that sandwich shop, they have this wedge salad that is like no other wedge salad I've ever had. I got a chance to eat it in New Orleans, but it's also in the cookbook. So I got the opportunity to make it this week. And it is this luxurious sort of hybrid between a blue cheese dressing and a ranch dressing. And then you smother an entire half a head of lettuce with it. Iceberg lettuce, I will say I do love.
It's a wedge salad.
Yeah, it's a wedge salad. And this salad was just fantastic. So I actually have some left I'm probably going to make tonight.
You know, dude, I saw that in your Instagram story and was salivating over it. That thing looks fantastic.
Yeah, well, now we both have things to make this week. I think I got to try that reverse sear pork chop. That sounds phenomenal. So
it was a lot of fun.
So cool. That wraps it up for this first episode. I am really excited to have you with us here full time, Perry. I've been working full time in Motion, for a little more than a month. Perry's joining me down here in the trenches, and we are in that garage type process of just working together and building it. Zach's right there alongside of us. We're going to have him on an episode coming up here soon. But yeah, really great to kick it off with you here, Perry, and everybody be on the lookout for future episodes. Anything else you'd like to add before we head out here today, Perry?
Thank you, everybody, for listening, especially in these early days, joining us on this journey. We're building this for you. So, yeah, thank you, everybody.
Love it. See you next Thursday, everybody. Does your agency struggle with projects that get stuck, unclear feedback from clients, or simply finding that clients are getting lost in the process and frustrated along the way? At Motion.io, we're building the solution to all of these problems, eliminating pesky follow-up emails and giving you clear and actionable feedback from your clients while keeping them informed every step of the way. We would love to hear from you in an effort to help make Motion.io the best product it can possibly be. To speak with Perry or myself, go to our website at Motion.io and fill out a contact form. While you're there, sign up to become a member of the Motion.io launch list. As a member of the Motion.io launch list, you'll get all of the great content we're putting out, along with product updates and opportunities to become a founding customer of Motion.io. The way our founding customer program works is that in our weekly newsletters, we'll send out opportunities to share your expertise, insights, or feedback with us. In exchange for donating your time, you'll become a founding customer of Motion.io, unlocking exclusive benefits, free swag, as well as lifetime white glove support for as long as you're using Motion.io. To sign up for our launch list, either visit our website directly or go to Motion.io/launch. Once again, that's Motion.io/launch.